Okay, ready? Yeah. And mark it.
What is the key political or social issue you believe we should be focusing on? Toi.
Disinformation, not to be mistaken with misinformation, but the concerted and intentional, well-funded disinformation campaign that is a threat to how we live our lives and our communities together. I wish it was called tahitanga, and it should be, but disinformation is a huge issue.
Kia ora, Toi. Tania?
Vote. So vote like your kids' future depends on it, our climate and natural world depends on it, and vote for people who are doing it really hard every day if you want to see a kind of a New Zealand where everyone can get a fair go.
Pai? Penetaui?
Economics. In the absence of dough, we can't fuel the journey for investing culturally, supporting socially, or enhancing environmentally.
Kia ora. India?
I think mine would be ambition. We do need to see ambitious leadership across the spectrum, but also we do need to see ambition when it comes to shooting for a distant horizon that's really grounded in our mātauranga, really upholds te tiriti and tino rangatiratanga, and adequately tackles climate change so that we can have a safe and livable future for our mokopuna.
To what extent are these things related, Tania? Connected to each other?
Well, I think they're all about what kind of country, what kind of Aotearoa do we want in the future? Do we want something that's dragging us back? Or do you want a hopeful future for future generations in this country where we do have swimmable rivers, where kids are fed, where we do have functioning democracy?
So, Ian, are we shooting ourselves in the foot by framing every issue as a Māori issue?
Well, I think it's really important. That's why I come back to education. Education should be the place we spend the most money on anywhere. It should start in early childhood and it should go all the way through. And it's a particular challenge now because with the advent of new technologies and AI, the big question we've got to ask ourselves is, what does that future look like? And the place to start doing that is in our education system. If we invest properly in the education system, and that includes mātauranga, it includes Indigenous knowledge, it includes how we bring all that together. But if we invest there, we will find in a generation's time, we need to be thinking intergenerationally, we will address all those other issues.
I think the biggest challenge for us, looking forward to 200 years of signing the Treaty of Waitangi, is what is our demographic makeup going to look like? And if you think net migrations are about 170,000 now, by the time we get to 2040, our populace is going to be close to 9 million. So tikanga, especially Māori tikanga, is going to become more critical and crucial to protect what's important and crucial and inherent about Māoridom, because we're becoming more secular and it's becoming a lot more difficult to protect that. Knowledge is power, and we've had a history of being rendered powerless.
So, Dave, when you work where the rubber hits the road, you work in grassroots communities. What are you seeing there as the burning issue for them?
I mean, the biggest issue for us, what we're seeing is, I mean, it's pure survival for a lot of our people. You know, and what we understand is poverty and depression and suicide and poor health. All these things don't know colour. They affect all of us. The unfortunate fact is that Māori Pacific are overrepresented in all of these things. So what will make a difference for us is actually something being done. The biggest issue for me and for our communities, these guys, and look, the last government were no better. You know, like, let's keep it real here. You know, so what are they gonna do? I would always say, why don't we, before the next election, why don't we mark up and say all these promises that were told to us, let's see what's been done. You know, let's see what's actually been ticked off the list, because all I'm about is our community.
Yep, go in.
If I was allowed 2 words, the other one sitting right beside education was child poverty. We need to, it is one of the biggest challenges. It will be the thing that makes the biggest difference, but I think we've got to stop complaining about it and do something about it, which is where we've been talking with Share My Super. We've got $20 billion every year that's sitting in Share My Super, and if we got 5% of that, that's $500 million a year that just goes to the front line. $2 billion a year solves child poverty. And the people are out there. We just need to tell that story well.
Toi, you're down the line in the Bay of Plenty. What are the key issues that you're seeing in your community?
One of the big things that's happening is the division in our community. We can't have these policy types of shifts. We can't reach across the aisle and have some bipartisanship so that we have some quality leadership and governance when we have external forces that we allow to come in here via their technology, our phones, social media, and they have a vested interest to keep us uneducated, to keep us unhealthy, to keep us divided.
Hinurewa, we know that there are powerful, well-organised, well-resourced lobby groups like New Zealand Initiative, Taxpayers Union. Are Māori missing the boat because we haven't sorted ourselves out on that front?
Well, those organisations are there for a reason, aren't they? I mean, they're there to ensure and help people, make sure that our rights are seen to, making sure that there are some forms of equity, because right now we've got so many social injustices around health, education, that are actually impacting on our communities. I mean, I agree with our panellists, you know, it's hard right now and I don't have the answers. But those organisations that you have mentioned, they're doing it hard as well. They're doing it really, really hard and they don't always have the answers. But together, collectively, you know, we're a very solutions-focused country, I think, and as Māori, we're very solutions-focused as well. Sometimes government just needs to listen more to the people and less to the politicians.
No mai ki te ao with Moana. We're back in 25, looking at the world around us through a Māori lens, connecting the dots across Aotearoa and beyond. The politics, the people, the stuff that affects our whānau. We're here for you. Challenging and celebrating as well. Every Monday night on Whakaata Māori. It's been a bit of an overload recently. There's like grenades and things being thrown out in a metaphorical sense. Winston Peters, of course, says words matter, which is kind of ironic given some of the words that he's tossing out there. Penetaui, are we getting too caught up in the kind of rhetoric and not focusing on the mahi or being distracted? What's your thoughts?
I think Māori can be some of the harshest critics. And as long as Māori continue to call Islanders coconuts and Indians curry munchers and Chinese slapheads or pingers, we need to have a hard look at ourselves. When we've got politicians who are Māori and they challenge ourselves, look, the rhetoric, it's not flash, but at the end of the day, you got to think about why does Winston Peters do that? We had the Prime Minister and the issue with old mate recording some workers, and then you had the Deputy Prime Minister change. Why did he do that? He did that because he wanted to be the media gumbo and have the attention come back onto New Zealand first, because they understand in 14 or 15 months they're going back to the ballot and they want people to vote for them.
So there are lots of words that are floating out there, India. It's easy, and we can see it on social media, how people get riled up. And then there's other stuff going on in the background. There's bills being passed through in urgency. How do we figure out what to call out and what to put our energy into? Because it seems quite relentless.
Yeah, I mean, when you live in a colonial settler state, the racism is everywhere, whether it's up front, like some of these words are being thrown around, or it's, you know, in the background as well. And it is hard to choose which battle to pick, especially when social media is geared towards the latest thing and the latest thing and the latest thing. And we do have politicians in Parliament who know how to game that. Not so much the words, but understanding the political function that they serve can help us understand whether to react to them or not. If it's a politician just, you know, speaking to their base and making sure that they're keeping the media attention on them, we can kind of be a bit more discerning about whether to react to it or not. And trust me, like, I'm in social media, some of the stuff that goes around on social media is awful and I get really bloody angry. And it's really hurtful, you know, some of the targeting towards our Takatapui community, towards the trans community is disgusting.
So it feels like a lot of the rhetoric that's been chucked out there is appealing to emotions, right? And so are we missing it as Māori? Like, I know we got upset over the Scribbles comment and things like that are offensive, but do we need to pick and choose what we're going to be offended about?
We can
go.
We can expend a lot of political capital on things that don't actually really matter when there's so many really big things happening and getting pushed through in the legislature. That's the issue that I have with getting distracted. We need to be focused on things that actually really matter. That's the challenge.
I think this whole question about politics is really, really crucial, and there is something we can't get sidetracked from, and that's MMP has shifted the balance of power to the extremes of both left and right. And one of the most dangerous politicians in the country today is David Seymour. And that's because he's an ideologue and he believes he's right. He's got it really easy. He only has to get 8% or 10%. And all of our discussions about what governments we're going to have is out the window because he is really clever and he knows he's only got to appeal to 10%.
Dover Samuels had a quote the other day, or it was something like, Māori are too busy focused on the treaty and not enough on their kids. So that kind of a thinking, where does that sit in the political spectrum nowadays?
Yeah, I was really disappointed by that comment because we know that as Māori, you know, that's our primary focus is our next generation, our tamariki. And of course I've heard about the incidents that have happened where tamariki are still, you know, there's still a lot of child protection issues that happen across our country for Māori. But I really push back on the comment that he's made because I think at the moment we need to continue to just show the positive things that a lot of our iwi and a lot of our Māori organisations are doing in that space. You know, talking about Dave and the mahi that he's doing with whānau, you know, wrapping around whānau and the huge need that is required at the moment. But I did want to come back to commenting on his statement about, you know, the previous government was exactly the same. And I'd have to disagree with that because we know that a lot more money was put into whānau support with the previous government. And we've never seen this level of disruption in our country for years.
Things
with
Māori. Things have gotten worse.
They got worse.
They're a lot worse now, but we didn't see any of that money.
Do you agree with that, Penetaui? Things got worse?
Yeah, it depends what side of the ledger you're standing on. If you're earning over 100, 200K, then does it really matter to you? Probably not. Does it matter to the people who are living in Strugglers Gully and Kaitaia? Most certainly. And I mean, I come from Kaitaia. I'm a councillor for the Whanau District Council. And that town, in the Northern District in particular, has the lowest wages in this country, average $23,000. So all these issues, I know them. I understand them intricately. Their gang issues, the meth issues, their DV issues, probably all made worse through the COVID period, but COVID's over now. And the discussion pertaining to Dover is last week we marched for the young girl, Kerrin, Pepene, 3 years old, who had been murdered in Kaikohe. Now, that's the, if we're going to do anything, we can't get any worse than that.
The implication there is that we've got to stop talking about the treaty and focus on children. Are they mutually exclusive? It's
a technique that plays into misconception about Māori. They're so worried about the treaty and they're worried about their kids. I mean, that's been going on for a long time. So that's what I talk about disinformation, that kind of binary rhetoric that frames the issue that it's either or, and politicians do it all the time. And so in terms of education, we need to educate ourselves on media literacy so that you can see through that kind of rhetoric, or you need other politicians who will call it out.
But when you turn up to a hikoi and the Labour Party are a no-show, the Toi Tū Tiriti group, they slept in obviously, and the only representative there is Dover Samuels in the form of the 80-year-old Ngāpuhi Kaumātua, our whae Maria Mino, then that's a real issue.
But there again,
you got the political parties ranting about the treaty, but they can't turn up to the march for the 3-year-old girl that's been murdered in Kaikohe.
Clearly they didn't sleep in.
Yeah, if you want to enjoy your rights, you learn about your obligations.
But saying that they slept in is another, that's what I'm saying, like those ad hominem attacks you know, if you want to hold them to account, then hold them to account on particular things. But saying, oh, they slept in, it buys into the stereotype that Māori is sleeping in and they're lazy and that's all. You know, that's not the case. We know that, you know, whether you like the Te Pāti Māori or not, they are hardworking because I see them around. You can't be, I know this as a politician, I get caught out that I'm not at every environmental hui across the Kuhi region. It's a huge region. And if somebody said, oh, he's probably sleeping in, and it's happened, I think you do a disservice, bro, when you do that as a politician, because it's ad hominem and it doesn't speak to the actual issue.
I'm over all of it. I'm over all politicians. They do my head in. You know, like how we just arguing, yet there are hungry children. You know, there are people that don't have homes, they're sleeping in their cars, and we see this every day. I want to follow a leader with scars of service. They understand what's going on in their community. They're there. So when they're making decisions, they understand it.
Do you think, Hinurewa, that people, Māori, are going to zone out or really go hard on voting? I mean, things are really kind of ramping up. What's your feeling?
I feel like people are zoning out already. You know, the MMP, the coalition, has made it really hard and tough for our people right now to actually see anything positive. Especially when it feels like that they're the ones on the firing line the whole time.
No mai ki te ao with Moana. We're back in 25, looking at the world around us through a Māori lens, connecting the dots across Aotearoa and beyond. The politics, the people, the stuff that affects our whānau. We're here for you. Challenging and celebrating as well. Every Monday night on Whakaata Māori. So Tania, there's a lot of labels that get thrown around. Woke seems to be the one that's the most torturous. Plus, when we were putting our panel together, one of our team was going, we've got too many lefties, we need some righties. And I'm like, is there even a thing anymore, left and right? What do you think? Are these labels irrelevant now?
Using woke as a pejorative term belittles the whakapapa of that word. It comes out of African American struggles from enslavement through the Jim Crow era, right, about staying conscious, being educated, exercising critical thinking. That's where that word comes from. And it's been imported here as a slogan against progressiveness from America, as the sloganeering of it. And you know, this is a development in politics, a really unwelcome one, of we've got politicians who are playing the person and not the ball, punching down on really vulnerable communities like our trans whānau and our whaikaha whānau. And why? Because I believe they don't have any real solutions to our perpetual problem, which is we are a low productivity, low wage economy, and it's getting worse.
It's kind of the nature of politics nowadays though, isn't it? To make everything very tribal.
Yeah.
You're right, you're left, you're woke. What does that even mean, Toy, woke? What does that mean?
When I first heard woke, it was in the hip-hop culture, and
you
stayed woke. You know, it meant that you were conscious.
That was cool.
It meant you were educated. And it's been co-opted by, let's say the right, but it's been co-opted by vested interests, and now it's weaponized where you have politicians, especially old Winston, who he's got his war on woke. What the hell does that mean? It means that, and this is actually, I think, the dangerous part for Winston, the undermining of institutions like the judiciary, like academic institutions, and these places that in the Western world were the pillars of civilization. They're now getting attacked, not only here, but in America as well. And it's like, oh, they're too woke.
Is it the we versus the me? Is that it?
We are not the God zone and the classless meritocracy that actually we were getting closer to up until the 70s, right? We are becoming more divided in terms of wealth, and we do have class in this country.
Equality, transparency, democracy. Are they like, do they mean the same things to you now that they used to before?
No. My generation, you know, I'm in my 60s, is that the narrative from when I grew up in early politics to now is different again. I mean, not to harp on the woke thing is the same thing. It's like, it's a negative rather than a positive. You know, it's a negative to be an educated Māori. you know, because you're seen as elitist.
Oh, you're elite, yeah.
I'm elitist.
That's another word.
That's another word, you know, an elitist. And I go, what makes us
You're
elitist?
an elite? Yeah.
You know, we speak, you know, because we now have Māori and non-Māori speaking te reo, isn't that what some of our elders wanted to see in this country? Us to be well, I won't use that word, but to be able to have, you know, our non-Māori and Māori, that's tiriti.
Yeah.
You know, te tiriti now is becoming a dirty word. I went, when did they become a dirty word?
I think for me, you know, it's really interesting because we're raised in school that democracy is this all-hallowed form of governance, right? And whereas actually if we think about pre-colonisation, governance was done differently. I think particularly for minorities, democracy sucks because unless we can get the numbers in Parliament, it's not going to work. And I think that's an important part of the distinction that Te Tiriti protects, right? Is that, sure, Crown, you can do your stuff over there and you're going to handle that there, but also we're going to govern ourselves in a way that upholds that mātauranga tipuna, that makes sure that everyone and the environment is taken care of.
David Seymour has said he can't be anti-Māori because he is Māori. Response?
He's a disgrace. That's what he is.
I've been around the political game a long time, just by virtue of being a son of a politician. I don't pay too much focus to the words that come out of their mouths. I pay focus to the people who have done the most for Māori. What other politician and political party have delivered for Marae $100 million in the last government? The last government, they said it was better. The last government, full of ngāpuhi, still couldn't get the ngāpuhi settlement done. So I'm focused on economics while ensuring that we enhance and protect Mother Nature. But at the end of the day, what do we need? We need jobs. Like I'm talking for our area, we need jobs. Whether that's sand mining, we're drilling, we're fracking, whatever we're doing, we need the jobs, we need the houses, and we need the dough in the back pocket where we can feel it.
I think he's right. His father Shane, like I don't know how he did it. He went out and arrested $1 billion and went out and he distributed it across Marae, across the country.
3 billion.
Well, it's 3 billion. You know, and they put the port in down in a portiki, and that's incredible. And then you see him now. Also, he's the matua for mining, which feels so against what Māori values are in many ways.
But we can fix that. And so I am having the debate with Matua Shane and Winston. You know, we should be fast-tracking to the future. We are fast-tracking to the past. Now, there is a Māori, Wayne Mulligan, who is working in bioforestry. It is an industry that is worth $18 to $30 billion a year, and he's doing it on Te Māori. We've got Shane has come on board on energy. He's put 60 million into a supercritical geothermal. We've now got money going into the bioforestry. That's what Māori should be talking about. We are arrogant. We keep saying we endanger Papatūānuku. We're not endangering her one jot. We just piss her off. And she will get tired of us. And long after we are gone, she will still be there. And what Māori should be focused on, our investments, is how do we work with her? She has the answers. Those answers are there. We need to be working with her.
Yes, we have an energy situation. Yes, we're facing the climate crisis at the same time. You know, my own home region was completely devastated. People died. A person's still missing and hasn't been found this many years on from the cyclone. There are ways in which friendly communities will have to pay the consequences for decisions like opening up mining and that kind of thing. But it doesn't have to be that way. We managed to do it before without having to resort to this sort of extractivism. And we will have a far more kind of stable base when the Crown decide that we can have all our stolen land back. And I think that's a really fundamental thing. They can keep making us settle for shitty jobs and terrible extraction when they're keeping most of the pie for themselves and refuse to, you know, fully honour te tiriti or waitangi.
Once the profits have been extracted and they've gone offshore and the parliamentarians have been put out to pasture, it's the community on the ground that's left with the mess. And it's happened time and time and time again.
Those types of industries, if we don't do it ourselves, then someone else will do it. There's been a segment on TV pertaining to the Māori dollar, Pouwhare talk close to $1 billion, Ngāti talk close to $1 billion, Tainui 2 billion. Instead of moaning, put their money where your mouth is.
So are you just saying that we just replicate the kind of model that's there? How do we do the balancing act with our values?
What I'm saying is if you want... You can't get something for nothing, okay? That's not how this world works. Māori think that the extractive industries some of the profit should come back to us, because even if we don't own the land, that's not how it works. If iwi and the Māori people want dough back in their coffers, front up with your cash, put your money where your mouth is. And if you can't, then sit on the benches or sit on the porch.
Economics and economic development that degrades our biosphere, wipes out other species, denigrates human dignity, right? That is ashes in our mouth, and it shows a lack of imagination in the present and in the future as well, because we can do better than this. So I have heard some say, well, Māori should be allowed to emit more carbon emissions because we've got so much, to catch up on. Well, tell that to our whanaunga in Tuvalu, whose Turanga Waiwai no longer exists. So they are paying the price. And why? We could be investing in so much better solutions and industries.
Ka pai. Kerrin, what's our superpower?
Our superpower is that we've got, and we will always have, huge vision for our people. The vision that my nana had, our tupuna have had, will continue to keep us driving forward. But coming back to the whole thing around economic development and GDP, there are so many other areas that we can be looking into as Māori and as a country. Because when you look at countries in Europe that are doing really well, they're not having to go into mining, they're not going to any of those spaces. They look at other investments.
Kia pai. Dave, what do you think is our superpower that we're not quite tapping into?
For us, it boils down to this poverty. Where the bro's from. It's like there's a lot of, we talk about our youth. There's a lot of kids growing up that we work with that wouldn't even think you could ever own a home, that you could even ever have a nice car without being a drug dealer. We're working in prisons where 100% of the youth we work with are Māori. It's heartbreaking.
If you're going to ask me what our superpower is, I go, te ao Māori. Our worldview philosophy on how we think, how we co-create, how we ideate, how we develop business has been in our DNA since before time, and it's how we share that knowledge base with our global markets. And we are global markets first before we're domestic markets. It's in that space where the opportunity is and where the solutions are, and that is where we will get the biggest traction, I reckon, for the future, for our mokopuna, for our children, because it's there where the markets are for us.
We're loved overseas. Like when we go overseas and people see us, and that's I think our superpower is our āhuatanga Māori. There's a mahanatanga that reverberates out of us, and it's recognised overseas. Here, domestically, there's history, that's difficult to deal with. And so, but when we're at our best, man, we're beautiful. And we're warm, and all the tangas, manakitanga, whanaungatanga, wōwena, hatutanga.
Bring on the tangas.
But they're beautiful. They're a beautiful aspect of our culture, and people feel it.
Amahi. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your insights.